And so when I didn't win the award, I don't give a crap about this award. I decided I flew the lady out. She was so emotionally attached to it.
For years, they were the perfect team on television. Wayne Carini, the charismatic star of chasing classic cars, and Roger Barr, the genius mechanic who could bring any engine back from the dead. But then one day, Roger was just gone. Now, the painful truth behind their split has finally come out, revealing a story of a shocking injury, a feeling of abandonment, and a friendship that was broken beyond repair. What really happened to end one of TV's most beloved partnerships? The dream team of classic cars. For 16 seasons, chasing classic cars was a staple for car lovers everywhere. The show followed Wayne Carini as he traveled the country, uncovering rare and forgotten automobiles. But the real heart of the show for many viewers was not just the cars, but the chemistry between Wayne and his master mechanic, Roger Barr. Wayne was the face of the operation, the smooth talker who found the cars and made the deals. Roger was the soul of the garage. He was the crotchety, no-nonsense craftsman with a tool in his hand and a lifetime of knowledge in his head. Their friendship seemed completely real because it was. It wasn't something created for the cameras. Their story began decades before the show ever aired in the small town of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Wayne first met Roger when he was just a boy, around 10 years old. Wayne's father, Robert Carini, owned a local body shop. Just down the road, Roger Barr ran his own repair shop that specialized in foreign cars. The two men had a deep professional respect for one another. If a car at Wayne's dad's shop needed complex mechanical work, he would send it to Roger. If a car at Roger's shop needed body repairs, it would end up with the Carinis. They shared customers and built a bond based on good, honest work. Young Wayne loved visiting Roger's garage. It was a wonderland of incredible machines. He would see Roger's own race cars and was even allowed to sit in them. The customer cars were just as amazing, with Ferraris, Maseratis, and Alfa Romeos parked next to more common MGs and Saabs. This was where Wayne's passion for cars was fueled, and Roger was a central part of that world. The man Wayne looked up to was more than just a local mechanic. Roger Barr had a history that could fill a book. He had served in the United States Air Force as a mechanic stationed in Germany, where he deepened his skills working on European cars. But Roger wasn't just a master with a wrench. He was a champion behind the wheel. During his time in Europe, he was a talented enough driver to serve as a backup for the Porsche factory sports car team. When he returned to the United States, he continued his racing career and became a national champion in both Formula V and Formula B competitions. He was a true legend in the motorsports world, a man who had forgotten more about cars than most people ever learn. This was the man who, in his retirement years, came to work for Wayne at his F40 motorsports shop, bringing his incredible experience to a new generation. Their on-screen dynamic felt so natural because it was built on this long history. They were two guys from the same town who shared a deep love for automobiles. Roger became a massive fan favorite. In fact, Wayne himself admitted that Roger's popularity often overshadowed his own. He wrote in a blog post titled "Roger and Me" that people would constantly walk up to him, and the first question they would ask was, "Is Roger here?" They wanted to meet the old master mechanic whose quiet skill and grumpy charm had won them over. This genuine, decades-long bond made their partnership the foundation of the show's success. It also made what happened next all the more shocking and difficult for fans to understand. The Ghost in the Garage. After season 14 of Chasing Classic Cars, something felt wrong. Viewers tuning in noticed that a key figure was missing. Roger Barr, the man who had been a constant presence in the F40 Motorsports garage, had vanished from the screen. There was no grand farewell episode. There was no announcement from the network. There was no explanation from Wayne Carini. One of the show's most beloved personalities was simply gone, leaving a void that fans immediately felt. The silence was deafening. In the world of television, especially a show that felt like visiting with old friends, this kind of disappearance was strange. The show's audience, who had invested years in watching Wayne and Roger's partnership, was left completely in the dark. Confusion quickly turned to concern, and fans flocked to online forums and social media, all asking the same question: what happened to Roger? The lack of any official information created a breeding ground for rumors. Some people guessed that Roger, who was in his 80s, had simply decided to retire. It was a logical assumption for a man of his age who had worked his entire life. Others worried that his health had taken a turn for the worse. The most morbid rumors even suggested that he might have passed away, and the show was keeping it quiet. The fact that neither the Discovery Channel nor Motor Trend said a word only fueled the fire. Wayne Carini also remained silent on the issue, which struck many as odd for a man who had known Roger for most of his life. This silence was more than just a lack of information. It became a part of the story itself. It turned Roger's absence from a simple cast change into a full-blown mystery. For a show built on the image of a friendly, tight-knit group of car lovers, the cold and quiet disappearance of a key member felt like a betrayal. It was the first major crack in the carefully crafted image of Wayne Carini as the respectful gentleman of the classic car world. How could a man so dedicated to preserving the history of cars seemingly erase a man who was such a huge part of his own history and the show's without a single word? The audience felt that something was wrong, but they had no idea how painful the real story truly was. While fans were left to speculate, Roger Barr was living through the toughest challenge of his life, a challenge that began with a terrible accident. An injury, an invoice, and an act of kindness. It began with a serious injury. While working at Wayne Carini's F40 motorsports shop, Roger suffered an accident that led to a severe leg injury. What followed was even worse. The injury resulted in a persistent and dangerous infection that required him to be hospitalized. For a man who had spent his life on his feet in a garage, this was a devastating blow. Even then, Roger's work ethic was unbreakable. After being released from the hospital, he tried to keep going. He returned to the shop, but could only manage to work for 4 hours at a time, pushing through the pain of his half shifts. But his leg problems continued, and it soon became clear that he needed major surgery. In fact, doctors told him he would need to have both of his knees replaced. This was a long and expensive road to recovery, and it was about to get much more complicated. It was during this difficult time that a shocking truth came to light, a detail that would completely change how fans viewed the show and the partnership at its center. Roger Barr, a fan favorite and a key part of the show's success for over a decade, was never paid a single dollar for his on-camera appearances on Chasing Classic Cars. He received his normal salary as a mechanic at F40 Motorsports, but he was never compensated for being a television personality. The show had helped build Wayne Carini's brand and his estimated net worth of over $20 million, but the man working beside him in the garage saw none of that success. This revelation was a bombshell. Suddenly, Roger's situation looked much more serious. He was facing enormous medical bills from his surgeries with only his mechanic's salary to rely on. He was an elderly man who had been a public face of a hit TV show, yet he was left in a difficult financial position when he needed help the most. The contrast between the show's success and Roger's personal struggle was stark. When friends and fans learned of his situation, they were outraged. They couldn't believe that a man who had given so much to the show and its viewers was left to handle this burden alone. In an incredible act of kindness and support, they decided to take matters into their own hands. A GoFundMe campaign was started with the title Friends of Roger Barr. The goal was to raise money to help the beloved mechanic pay for his expensive knee surgeries. The response was overwhelming. Fans from all over the world donated, showing their love and appreciation for Roger. The campaign raised nearly $30,000, a testament to how much he meant to them. It was a heartwarming moment, but it also served as a quiet judgment. The fact that a public fundraiser was needed in the first place said everything about the support Roger was not receiving from his employer. The fans had shown where their loyalty was. But as Roger prepared for his long recovery, he was about to receive one final, crushing blow. The letter that ended it all. He was facing a long and difficult rehabilitation, and his future at the shop he had worked at for years was uncertain. In a friendship that had lasted for decades, one might expect a phone call, a visit, or at least a personal conversation about what came next. But that is not what happened. Instead of hearing from his old friend, Wayne Carini, Roger received a cold, impersonal message. It was a formal letter, or an email, informing him that his employment at F40 Motorsports was being involuntarily terminated. After more than a dozen years working for Wayne and a lifetime of knowing the Carini family, it was over. Not with a handshake or a heartfelt conversation, but with a piece of paper. The method of his dismissal was as painful as the dismissal itself. It was a clear signal that their relationship was no longer personal. It had become a cold, corporate transaction. The man who was like a piece of the furniture in the F40 garage, the man fans traveled to see, was now being treated like a stranger. The situation got even worse. After being fired, Roger realized he had left some of his essential personal tools at the shop. These were the tools of his trade, items he had used for years. But getting them back wasn't easy. The relationship had become so strained that Roger revealed he had to hire a lawyer just to get his own property back from F40 Motorsports. A friendship that had started in the garages of Glastonbury had ended in the hands of lawyers. For Roger, the feeling was one of utter betrayal. He later spoke about how hurt he was by the experience. He felt that he had been completely abandoned and cast aside at the lowest point in his life. When he was injured, in pain and recovering from surgery, the support he expected from a friend and employer simply wasn't there. The silence during his recovery was bad enough, but the termination letter was the final, devastating act. The dream team of chasing classic cars was officially and painfully broken. The friendship that viewers had admired for so long was over. But as Roger began to slowly piece his life back together, the drama was far from finished. The public silence from Wayne Carini would soon be filled with whispers of a much deeper, more personal conflict. The sound of silence. Fans and critics waited to see how he would respond to the growing controversy. His answer was a masterclass in public relations, but it did little to satisfy those who knew the painful details of the story. When asked directly about Roger, Wayne always spoke kindly of him. In one interview, he called Roger's contributions to the show invaluable and stated, "I hold immense respect for him." These were polite, professional words, but they rang hollow for many. What was more telling was what Wayne did not say. He never publicly addressed the most damaging parts of Roger's story. He never explained why Roger was never paid for his television role. He never commented on the GoFundMe that fans had to set up to cover Roger's medical bills. And he never gave a reason for the cold, impersonal termination letter that ended their decades-long relationship. This wall of silence on the specific issues disappointed many loyal viewers who had expected more transparency and honesty from the face of the show. While Roger was dealing with his health, his finances, and the loss of his job, Wayne's career continued to flourish. His world was one of continued success, and expansion. He was busy managing his 3 separate businesses in Portland, Connecticut: F40 Motorsports, the classic car dealership; Continental Auto Limited, a high-end collision shop; and Carini Carrozzeria, his personal restoration shop. He launched new media ventures, including a magazine called The Chase and a podcast. There were even hints that he was in discussions for new television shows with other networks. The contrast was impossible to ignore. On one side was Wayne, the successful TV star and businessman whose empire was only getting bigger. On the other was Roger, the elderly craftsman who had been left behind, forced to start over after a lifetime of work. Wayne's carefully chosen words of respect seemed to be a strategic move to avoid addressing the controversy head-on, allowing him to maintain his public image while the man who helped build it was left to deal with the consequences. It seemed like a story of a business deal gone wrong. But a shocking new allegation was about to surface, one that suggested the split was not about business at all, but about a personal betrayal so deep that it could never be forgiven. A line was crossed. The reason for the bitter split was allegedly not just about what happened in the garage, but what happened with Wayne Carini's family. A report surfaced quoting Wayne, who was said to be in tears as he made a heartbreaking accusation. He allegedly said, "Roger treated my disabled daughter like she didn't even exist." This single sentence shifted the entire narrative. This was no longer about a contract dispute. This was about a deep, personal wound. To understand the weight of this accusation, you have to understand how important Wayne's family is to him, especially his youngest daughter, Kimberly. Kimberly was diagnosed with autism at a young age, and this experience transformed Wayne's life. He became a dedicated and passionate advocate for autism awareness and research. He has used his fame to help organize and sponsor car events for charities like Autism Speaks. He has spoken about his passion for helping families with special needs children, even creating a trust to benefit them. His daughter is at the center of his world, and for him, family is everything. An insult or slight against his daughter would be more than just an offense. It would be a betrayal of the highest order. If the allegation is true, it provides a powerful, emotional motive for Wayne's actions. It could explain the coldness, the silence, and the finality of the termination. For a father as devoted as Wayne, someone crossing a line with his child, especially a child with special needs, could be an unforgivable act. This new information complicates the story immensely. It turns what seemed like a clear case of a wronged employee into a messy, painful, he said situation. Was Roger the victim of a wealthy TV star who cast him aside? Or was Wayne a heartbroken father reacting to a deep personal betrayal that no one saw? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, known only to the two men involved. But the public accusation, true or not, showed just how ugly and personal the feud had become. It had moved far beyond the garage and into the most sensitive areas of their lives, likely destroying any chance of reconciliation forever. Finding heaven after hell. After the injury, the surgery, the firing, and the public drama, Roger Barr could have faded into a bitter retirement. But that was never his style. Instead, he did what he had always done. He picked up his tools and got back to work. After his recovery, Roger found a new professional home at a place called the Paddock Car Restorations in New Britain, Connecticut. It was a garage known for its work on classic and vintage cars, a perfect fit for a man of his talents. And for Roger, it was more than just a new job, it was a sanctuary. In an interview after he started working there, Roger's words were powerful and emotional. He said that when he first walked into the paddock, he thought he had died and gone to heaven. He went on to call it the happiest place I've ever worked. After everything he had been through, this was an incredible statement. At the paddock, he found an environment that was the complete opposite of the high-pressure, drama-filled world of television he had left behind. He was surrounded by what he called nice people in a nice shop. The owner of the company, a man named Michael Donnelly, was a huge fan of Roger's work and respected him deeply. Donnelly praised Roger as a walking encyclopedia of knowledge about classic cars. At the paddock, Roger was not a sidekick or a supporting character. He was a valued and appreciated master craftsman, respected for both his incredible skills and for the long journey he had taken. He said the job was not nearly as stressful as filming for Chasing Classic Cars, and it allowed him to get back to what he truly loved. He found peace. Away from the cameras and the spotlight, Roger rediscovered the simple joy of working on beautiful cars with people who admired him. He was no longer chasing fame or dealing with the politics of television. He was living life on his own terms, finding happiness and a sense of purpose in the quiet hum of a well-run garage. His story had come full circle. The man who had been cast out found redemption not by fighting back, but by staying true to himself. He proved that his worth was never tied to a TV show or a famous partner. His value was in his hands, his mind, and his unshakable spirit. In the end, the story of Wayne Carini and Roger Barr is a tale of two old friends who took two very different roads. Wayne remains in the public eye, his classic car empire continuing to grow. Roger Barr found his own quieter version of success in a garage in Connecticut, surrounded by the tools he has always loved and the genuine respect he has earned. Their story serves as a hard lesson in the complexities of friendship, loyalty, and the painful truths that are often hidden just out of the camera's view.